All right, good morning, everyone. It's Louise Green, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Amanda Leith, who is the owner and director of Shift Recovery. And she also happens to be one of my best friends who I've been friends with for over 35 years. We met in grade 8. So not only do I get to hear her incredible story through her professional life, but I've actually watched her go through her personal story over the years, and we've gone through a lot of that together. So today is going to be a really cool interview because I get to interview one of my best friends about all the fantastic work she's doing. So I think it's best described if you take it away, Amanda, and let people know what Shift Recovery is about.
Thanks, Louise. Super excited to be here and sharing my story with you, Louise, as you said, one of my closest friends for so many years, and I've got to witness your amazing journey too, so I'm honored to be here. So Shift Recovery, wow. Shift Recovery is a food addiction treatment program, and it is actually where I got my own recovery from. I am a recovering food addict, and I can talk more about what that means. And I came to this program over 5 years ago, and everything about my life has changed since then. Nothing is the same. And I was an addictions therapist, and I worked for them. And then we're coming up to the year anniversary, actually. In 2 days, it will be 1 year since I purchased the company. And now I get to work with people. I run programs that support people up and out of the struggles and depths of food addiction. And food addiction, just like drug and alcohol addiction, is a savage, fatal disease that takes over many, many people's lives. And it can show up in many different ways. It can show up as people being obese, people being extremely underweight, people being normal weight. It can show up in many, many different ways. And as I say, I can get into more of those details as we get further into the interview. But that's basically what Shift is. We run programs, both inpatient programs and outpatient programs, to help people with their struggles with food.
So, I mean, it's interesting, whenever I interview people that are so passionate about the work that they do, there is always there's typically this personal backstory that makes it so that they have this gift to be able to do this work. And so you were saying that you're a recovering food addict yourself. So where can you start us in your story about when that started for you and how it presented itself?
Yeah, sure. So for me, food always has played a fairly big role in my life. When I was a young girl, I was quite a small little girl. And you watch as probably from when I was about 7 years old, I started gaining a little bit of weight. I was a pudgy little girl. I got teased in school. I don't remember crazy stories with eating when I was young, although many people have those stories, many don't. And then I got into high school, and other things took away my need to eat. You know, I was kind of fascinated with boys, and I started dabbling in other things. And then in my kind of mid-20s, food became really, really important to me, and I really started gaining weight. I didn't know that food was important to me. I'm just saying that now. But if you look at me, I started gaining weight. And then from the time I was really 20 till 40, my food behaviors just got more and more out of control. And so what that looked like for me is in my early 20s, I probably weighed about 145 pounds. I wouldn't say I was healthy. My life was pretty crazy. I was working a lot, drinking a lot, but I was skinny. And that's all I cared about, was being skinny. That's all I was good if I was skinny, not really. And yeah, right. So then I started eating more, packing on the weight, and life was terrible. And all I needed was to be thin. If I could get thin, life would be okay. And all I could do though was eat more. So I'd wake up in the morning and be like, okay, today's the day I'm going to go on that diet. I'm going to exercise, and this is going to stop. And then, of course, by the end of the day, not even by the end of the day, by lunchtime, I was back into eating my foods again. I wasn't doing the things I'd committed to. And this just kind of kept spiraling out of control. And I kept gaining weight, gaining weight, gaining weight. I got well over 200 pounds early on, probably in my early 30s. And you know, more than that, though, again, at the time, all I saw was my weight gain. But when I look back now, I was terribly unhappy. I was depressed. And I blamed it all on my size. And then I would get things like, oh, your cholesterol's getting higher and you're pre-diabetic. And I'd be like, okay, this is the thing that's going to stop me. And I couldn't lose. I just kept going. And I grew up in a very healthy eating home. So I knew what healthy eating was. I worked in an environment where there was healthy food. I've liked to be active. I've liked to exercise. So I had those parts of it, but it wasn't enough for me. I couldn't just be given a diet or an eating plan, an exercise plan, and just go away and do it. And it was not for lack of trying. I tried so hard. You know, I'm a smart, intelligent woman, and it was like, why can't I get this? I just must be weak. I must have no willpower. And so just the shame kept coming on. The shame came on as the weight went up. The shame came on as the weight went up. You know, and by the time I was in my late 30s, I was over 300 pounds. I now had diabetes. I had high cholesterol. I had actually had weight loss surgery because I was so desperate. And no matter what I did, which was a lot, this was not for lack of trying. You know, I literally tried everything. I tried every diet. I tried every gym, all exercise, health clubs, therapists, counselors, weight loss surgery. Like I was desperate, but I was desperate to lose weight because then I thought my life would be fixed. And it just got worse and worse. And as it got worse, my self-esteem, my self-love went down. And I just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And I was treated for years with an eating disorder, like emotional eating. If I got therapy and learned how to eat in moderation, I would be good. I tried all of those things. Like I really gave it everything I possibly could. And there I was, in my early 40s, over 300 pounds, diabetic, high cholesterol, and suicidal. Life was not going very well. And on the outside, though, life still looked pretty good. I had a career that I went to, but you know, the fault lines were starting to show. Anyways, so then I heard about this idea about food addiction, and I started realizing, yeah, my behavior with food is very similar to what people would talk about with alcohol and drugs, where I would wake up in the morning and say, I'm not going to do this today, and then I would do it. And so it was this idea that I was powerless over certain foods. And the reason I was powerless is that my body had become addicted to certain foods. And as long as I was continuing to put them in my body, I would never be able to stop them. And so my big things were sugar and flour. I was chemically addicted to sugar and flour. So as long as I was eating them in any form, even little amounts, I was powerless over to be able to stop them. So I went to treatment. I mean, there was kind of a lot more that happened in there, but I went to treatment out of desperation. And I got that piece. And that was 5.5 years ago. And I was given a food plan that took my addictive substances out of my plan. And every single day for 5.5 years, I have now eaten that plan. I've not picked up sugar and flour. And I need to tell you, though, it's not that I just got this food plan and everything was good. I have to work a program every single day to be able to follow that food plan. So the food itself was really not the issue. The food was my symptom. I had the disease of addiction, and the symptom was that I gained a lot of weight because I overate. And again, my weight was not my fix. You know, so I am the size I am now, but if I didn't do the other work that I do, my life would be exactly the same. So one of the symptoms is weight loss or weight gain of having food addiction. And one of the symptoms of being in recovery from food addiction, if you're overweight, is weight loss. But they are really the smallest parts of the whole program. You know, really, I got my whole life back. And as I say, I just kind of live this life of beyond my wildest dreams. That does not mean my life is fairy tales and unicorns by any stretch. I struggle. I'm a human being. I wake up some days and I don't want to, I'm grumpy. But I have these things and like this career. And so now for me, it's really about giving back. All I want is for people that are struggling with weight and body issues to have the idea that food addiction might be the issue. There's many other reasons that lead to body issues and obesity or underweight, but I want it to be a well-known thing worldwide when we're struggling with these things that maybe I have food addiction, and if I have food addiction, there is a solution. And the reason I haven't been successful all these years with everything I've done is not because I have no willpower, I'm a failure. It's because I was getting the wrong treatment for the wrong disease. So yeah, that's kind of
I love how you present it, because I think there is this fairy tale that if we can get control of our weight, that everything's going to be great. And I've had many clients that have had weight loss surgery, and I've had many clients that did Dr. Bernstein when it was big, like very unhealthy weight loss program, but like dramatic amounts of weight loss, but yet still struggled with self-esteem and self-love. And I think that that's, like you were saying about addiction, it's no secret that I also am in recovery, that it is an underlying issue. It's usually some kind of hole or hurt or trauma or something that's there that we then use outside sources to try to fix. And during the process, if you're predisposed or you work at it hard enough, you can become addicted to these things. And so I love that you're very real about it, because I've watched you do the work. Like, it's a day in and a day out grind, and not to make that, use the word grind as a negative thing. It's a very positive thing to go on a journey of self-discovery and to not have to pick up things to self-medicate. So I love that you say that it's not easy. But neither is living in addiction. So it's either, do I live in this pain or do I do the work? And I, move forward with conviction in my life and go off and live your wildest dreams, because you have the headspace to do it. You have the mental real estate. So
yeah, I just want to say, Louise, you said something that just really rang true to me, is that when you said the piece around being a human, the human condition, it's not easy. And what I've come to know, though, is that my worst day living now in recovery is better than my best day when I was in active addiction. And that's a terminology that's thrown around, but it really is true. Like, being in that addiction, being in that obsessive mind, like, okay, I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm not going to eat. Oh, then I eat. Who watched me? Who saw me? What are people thinking of my body? Do that people think I'm skinny? Does that person think I'm fat? Oh, I'm going to eat this and I'm going to hide this. Oh, I don't want anyone to see my wrappers. Like, the obsession of wanting, craving, needing the food is all consuming, and then feeling terrible about myself, and then hating myself. And so, yeah, that freedom is beyond anything I ever could have imagined. So thank you for reminding me about that. And just one other thing I want to just say quickly that you also reminded me on is the, people that have had weight loss surgery or done Dr. Bernstein. Again, it is, if we're food addicted, if we're actually we've gone over to addiction, anything other than treatment for food addiction will not support us. So that a weight loss surgery is never going to work for someone like me, because I'm still in addiction. So it's made my stomach smaller. I can eat less, but as long as I'm still eating the foods that I'm now addicted to, I will never recover from it. So we need to get the recovery from the addiction first, stop those substances, and then it's a possibility, maybe, that weight loss surgery can work, can be helpful in some situations, can lend to our program. But we have to deal with the addiction first, even before we deal with the emotional issues or the trauma. Because if I'm getting help for all my trauma and emotional stuff out of a therapist, but I'm still in active addiction, I'm not getting very far, because I'm still in active addiction and my brain is still lit up by the foods that I'm eating. So I don't want to get too technical, but
I think it's
to let people know that Yeah, it's not their fault. If they're an addict and they're trying all these other treatments and nothing's working, it's not their fault. It's
No.
not their fault.
And I watched you, like when Amanda says it wasn't from lack of trying, it was not from lack of trying. And like many, many thousands of dollars spent, many, and that's the thing about even just people that are doing diet culture in general. It's like often an internalized failure, which if you're living in a model of failure is not helpful for anyone. But as Amanda's saying, if you're living in addiction and you're unaware of it, and that's what I want to get to next, is like, how can people identify this? But if you're living in addiction and you're not aware of it, and you're going to all these other things and then internalizing that failure as your own, that you get into the shame spiral. Like I used to think all the time, like, why can't I get my shit together? Like, why can everyone else do this? And, when you look at the statistics of people that are actually successful at weight loss and long-term, from diets, not that many people are successful. So, but it is imperative that you're dealing with the right treatment plan, regardless of whether you are, I'm going to segue back to you here where we talk about the 3 different types of eaters.
You want me to do that now before I talk about the signs of addiction? Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
I think it's best to talk about the 3 different types of eaters, and then let's get into the signs of addiction.
Okay. Perfect. So yeah, thanks, Louise. So yeah, so we've kind of, Phil Wardell, who was the founder of Shift that I now own, at the time it was called Acorn, created these 3 different categories. And so what we've got is I hate this terminology, but normal eater, and it's for lack of a better way to call it, but that has weight issues. So they're either underweight or overweight. Most of this is normal eaters, but that have obesity issues. So if their only issue is obesity, then the treatment for them is literally what we're all told: calories in, calories out. They need a food plan and an exercise plan, and off they go and do it. So it's pretty straightforward. You're struggling with weight, and often these people, they go to the doctor, they have maybe their physical, and their doctor's like, oh, you're bordering on high blood pressure or high cholesterol, so you need to change your ways. So then the doctor gives them this food plan: calories in, calories out, food plan, exercise plan. Off they go. They do it. It's good to go. So that's number 1.
Can I say one thing though? Is that not what millions of people are being prescribed by their physician?
That is what the medical community, and I don't want to get into that. It is not their fault. This is what they're taught. That is what the medical community and most of the world at large believes. So it's like, well, come on, just do this diet and exercise program. What's wrong with you, right? So that really leads to that willpower. But there are some people that actually works for them. There really are some people out there that works for them. So if you've tried that and it hasn't worked, probably not in that category. Okay, so then we go to the next category. And the next category is an emotional eater. So basically an emotional eater is you're eating over what's eating you. So you've got some sort of trauma. And when I say trauma, we often think it's got to be these big dramatic things, but you can't grow up in our world and not have some sort of trauma. So there's emotional issues going on, and you're eating to cover up those issues. You're eating to make yourself feel better. So the solution for that is you need some sort of therapy, counseling. You need to learn ways to deal with your feelings and emotions that are coming up. And you also might need some direction on calories in, calories out. You might need that as well. But you've got your therapy, you're learning how to deal with emotions. You possibly have information on calories in, calories out, and off you go. You're good to go. So if you've tried that and it hasn't worked, okay, let's check out the next category. And the next category is food addiction, where we've bumped over into addiction. And I want to be clear, there's parts of every single one of these categories in food addiction. Like, you know what I mean? Like, absolutely the food addict might need information on calories in, calories out. The food addict almost guaranteed has trauma and needs therapy. However, when we've bumped over into addiction, the first thing that must be treated is the disease of addiction, which is a brain disease. It's a brain disease. This is not a moral issue. It's a brain disease. And what this means is that my body is now chemically addicted to certain substances. That's what addiction means across the board, whether it's drugs, alcohol. So it's exactly the same. Drugs, cocaine, sugar, exactly the same. My body now, to function as normal, to feel normal, needs these substances. That's when I've crossed over into addiction. So what works for addiction, first of all, is we got to get rid of those substances. And I just want to say here that for me, the idea of never eating sugar or flour or whatever it was for me specifically was like, no way, that's way too strict. I'm never doing that. That is everyone's initial reaction. And I just want to tell you that in my experience and in hundreds of my clients' experience, it's so much easier eating this way than being in addiction. So, I can talk more about that. But anyway, so the first thing we need to do in addiction is get rid of the substances. So get a food plan that eliminates all of our substances that we're actually addicted to. And then we also need a substantial amount of support. So it could be outside therapy. It could be a 12-step program, such as Overeaters Anonymous or Food Addicts Anonymous. We absolutely need support. And then we need to work a program kind of every day for the rest of our lives, because without that extra support, we're just on a diet and we're back to treating ourselves like we're in group 1. So if we just have a food plan and eliminate the chemical dependency, we're still left with this, like you were talking about, Louise, this kind of whole low self-esteem. And if we've just taken away the food as an addict and nothing else, we're kind of crazy. We might even feel worse than we did before when we had the food. So we need a substantial amount of support. So it's the food plan and then a substantial amount of emotional support from other people that share our story. We need to be around people that have the same story as us, that are talking our story. And then we also might need calories in, calories out. So kind of that's how the 3 stages. And again, it's not that, it's not that straight across line. We kind of go in and out of them, but it's trial and error, which will then get me to the place of, how do I know if I'm an addict? Wow, what a big question. And unfortunately, there's no test. I can't go in for a blood test to the doctor and go, oh, am I a food addict? Am I an alcoholic? Am I a drug addict? There's no test like that. But there's a lot of signs. And so a lot of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, do I continue to use this substance, in my case, food, despite negative consequences? Absolutely for me. My weight was going up, high cholesterol, I was in isolation, I didn't want to be around people, I was diabetic. So yep, tick for me. I continued to use despite the negative consequences. Did my need for more get more and more and more? Did I constantly need more to feel more satisfied? Absolutely, if I look at myself over the years. Did I have people tell me in my life, be concerned about me? And everyone at the time that was concerned about my weight, that was the focus, but that was their concern. I had doctors in my family, absolutely. I had people tell me that. If I ever stopped doing it for a day or something, did I have any kind of detox? Was I in any kind of withdrawal from it? So it's all these kind of questions and you can find a lot of these questions on our website, which is www.foodaddiction.com. There's a whole quiz that we give around, am I a food addict? So unfortunately, the only person that can diagnose you as an addict is yourself. And it really is about asking yourself those questions. And here's the great news. If you're unsure, but you try the treatment for food addiction, it will never cause you harm. And if it works, chances are you're a food addict. It will never cause you any harm. And I just also want to say, everyone needs, unlike drug addiction and alcohol, which is really kind of straight up. You put down alcohol and you're good. You put down certain drugs and you're good. With food, it's the same. It's that clear. It's that black and white. You put down the food, but there are different food substances that we're addicted to. And as I say, the most common ones are sugar, without a doubt, and flour. And then there's a couple other things that are very common, but seem to be, not everyone has them. One is grains. Some people are very sensitive to that. And the other is volume. Many of us are volume eaters. So like, I weigh and measure my food because I'm a volume eater. I always want more. And those things are tailored specifically to different people. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, I hope, to kind of what you were asking.
So you're saying that it's typically grains, flour, and sugar, and like I've heard you say in the past that combinations of them can be.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Louise. So, right. So sugar for sure, without a doubt. And then flour is the second most common one. And then some people are grains and volume. And so for someone like me, interestingly enough, is that straight up sugar was not really my thing. So like hard candies weren't really my thing. Pop wasn't really my thing. But if I have the combination of sugar, fat, and flour, so like a donut, cake, cookies, baked goods, those were my thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and sometimes texture for people like crunchy, like potato chips. They might not have the allergy to potatoes, but they might have the allergy to the potatoes and the fat and the crunchiness all together. And the allergy basically means once I start eating this, I can't stop. And this is where we can get tricked. Oh, well, I stopped yesterday. I was able to just have 2 cookies. But how long are we able to sustain that? That's another thing people get tricked on. It's like, well, I've lost lots of weight before. I've lost hundreds of pounds lots of times. But were we able to sustain it? Was your goal to lose it and then gain it back and be in the same place? Not real. That's very rarely someone's goal. So is it sustainable over a long period of time? And again, if we're only focusing on the weight loss, we got the wrong thing. Now, I'm not going to kid you. Is the weight loss a bonus? Absolutely. For me, it's a bonus in so many ways. But the bonus is more that I get to move my body. I can go up and down the stairs and have the freedom. Like I'm not out of breath. There's not much I can't do with my body. I get to move in my body. I get to play with my niece. I'll just say really quickly, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but a couple years ago, I was playing with my niece who at the time was 3, and I had a stepdaughter at the time who was 18, and my niece and I were up a slide, and we were sliding down, and then we'd run up and go down together, and my stepdaughter was at the bottom, and she was crying, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I just feel so sad because you could never play with me." Because when I was with her, I was obese and in the food, so I never got to play and be free. So it's those kind of things that the freedom of my body size allows me. And the body size there's a vast difference in what a healthy body weight is. So I really want to be careful when we talk about that. But yeah, so it's freedom. It really gives me freedom physically in my body and freedom emotionally in my head is what my recovery has given me.
But just like you were saying earlier, the weight of your body was a symptom of something else, right? And
exactly.
so is it now. It's a symptom of the work.
Exactly.
It's not a symptom, a result. It's a result, like it's a reflection of the inner workings of what's going on, really.
Yeah. And again, it's such a small, people would think, so I lost about 140 plus pounds. And yeah, that's amazing. But that is not the excitement for me. Like the excitement is in the life I get to live. It really is. And if someone had said that to me 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh yeah, right, sure. But it really is like this body size is such a small part of this overall life I get to live.
So what would you say when you're working in your intensives with people? And first of all, could you just kind of describe what an intensive looks like and what it is?
Sure. So as I said at the beginning, Shift offers several programs to people struggling with food addiction. And one of our main program, and anyone that's brand new that they have to go to, is called an intensive. And the intensive is an inpatient 1-week program. So you come, we hold them in a house in a neighborhood, and we hold them mainly in Florida in the US and in Vancouver in Canada. And the basic thing we're working on there for people is that people come in, we get a specific food plan for them, we get them detox, so off their food, and then we give them tools to go out in the world when they go home and live this new way of life. And then it's actually a 5-week program. It's 1 week where you're with us in the house, and then the next 4 weeks you're home doing your life, and you have we continue on the program. So you work with a counselor one-on-one, you work in groups on Zoom, kind of like you and I are doing, and you do daily email sessions. So the basics of our intensive is we get your food plan, we get you detox, and we supply you with tools to go out and live your life this way. So that's our main program. Then we have other programs for alumni thereafter. We do support for people thereafter. So like actually tonight I start They usually start on a Friday night, and tonight is the start of one of our programs. So I'm here in Florida today. I just flew here, and I'll be leading one of those programs today.
And so what would you say is your clients' biggest struggles through, I mean, do you see common threads of
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it, I have to say. And this is also the beauty of going to something like a support group, like a 12-step group, and certainly coming into our programs. People, they're small groups. We don't take more than 10 people, and there's 2 leaders. And people start hearing their story. They start to realize they're not alone. And oh my gosh, you do that too? And instantly, it's like this relief. It's this bonding. So the common threads are very often there's issues with weight, whether it's overweight or underweight. But I want to be clear, people can be a normal weight and still be incredibly suffering with food addiction. So just to be clear about that. But there's often people come in, weight is an issue for sure. People are lonely, sad, isolation, that their life has gotten kind of smaller and smaller. You know, they might go to work and come home. On the outside, their life can look okay. They kind of show this facade to other people, but inside, they're feeling pretty sad and lonely. Most of the time, it is, again, like me, not for lack of trying. They have done hundreds of diets, spent thousands of dollars. Most of them tried hundreds of exercise programs. There's a level of desperation. People are pretty desperate. They're desperate for help. A lot of them come in not very hopeful. Like for me, I remember when I flew to my program for the first time, I wasn't hopeful. I was like, here I go again, another thing I'm going to try. So that's kind of the threads I see. There's some desperation. Often there's weight issues. And some people come in, they've already heard about food addiction. They're part of a 12-step program, but they need more support. Some people come in and they're brand new hearing about food addiction. So they might have Googled online weight loss. And as I say to people, if you come to us because your weight loss is your goal, that's okay. If that's what gets you in the door and gets you to then be aware, maybe I'm a food addict, that's okay. So that's kind of the common theme. And I tell you, I have never had somebody leave our program without hope. And the most common thing I hear is, you know, I had no idea that this could happen in just 7 days. Like, it is amazing the miracles that can happen in the 7-day period. And again, do not get me wrong, this is not a miracle. This is not a quick fix. You've got to go out there and then live your life one day at a time in this recovery. But it just kind of gives people that base, that foundation, and a group of people, a group of like-minded people that are doing the same thing. They're kind of in the trenches with you every day. So it gives you that connection.
I think that's super important, especially when you're in addiction and you're isolating, and also the biggest thing and the biggest sadness for me, and I know it is for you too, is like this repetitive cycle that people have been stuck in, that they've internalized as that there's something wrong with them, and that they're a failure, that it's their fault.
Yeah, and Louise, it's pretty hard to be in this society and not get that. And again, it's not society's fault, it's ignorance. And so my biggest, you know, I'm always willing to talk about this as much as I possibly can, because my dream is just that there's some knowledge and understanding from the world at large that it's not just about people's willpower. If you're struggling with this, you're not weak, you're not a failure. And if you're the one struggling, that there is a solution. And if you're not the one struggling, that you're not looking at these people like, just get it together. You know, like just come on, wake up, be stronger. This is nothing about being stronger. As a matter of fact, I would go to say that the clients that I work are some of the strongest people I know. You have to be incredibly strong, as you know, Louise, to live day in and day out in this place of self-hate. And okay, I'm going to try today, and then I fail, and then I get up and I try again. You have to be incredibly strong to continue on with that day in and day out. So it is just nothing to do with your willpower, your strength, or who you are as a human being. And unfortunately, that is not the message we get in society. And so I'm just passionate to spread that word that food addiction is real and it's a possibility. It's just a possibility. Like, I want it that when we go to our doctors and when we're struggling, if you've got a patient, or if you're a patient and you're struggling with any of the symptoms that could possibly be food addiction, you know, high cholesterol, diabetes, overweight, underweight, even depression, that there's a possibility that we look at, are you maybe food addicted, as well as all the other things, because not everyone that's obese or underweight is food addicted, for sure. I just wanted a possibility. So it's really just about getting the word out there, and that there's hope. There is hope, and there could be another way that you never been given the opportunity to try.
So we've had some brief discussions in the past about the medical community at large, and that, you know, we hear about heart attacks, and we hear about, you know, the ill effects of diabetes, but you know, I've heard you say that this is in some cases undiagnosed food addiction. So we have all these statistics on these grave disease that are killing people, but we have no statistics on food addiction. So where are we at with the medical community?
Yeah, great question. And it's, you know, I'm part of another nonprofit called the Food Addiction Institute. And our kind of mission is to get this word out there, as well as to educate the medical community. And what it's interesting, I'll just say that the mission for the Food Addiction Institute was always to educate the medical industry. And then we realized, for all of us with personal stories, that the best way to educate the medical industry is with our own stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I know my own doctor, when I was going away to this treatment, she was like, okay, sure, whatever, Amanda, all these things you've tried. But then she's seen my life now, and to her, it's a miracle. You know, the doctors don't ever see this. They don't ever see people reverse their diabetes, reverse their cholesterol, lose all this weight and keep it off. They don't see it. So again, it's no fault of their own, and they're not taught any of this. Addiction in general is not that widely accepted in the medical community. And we have alcoholism and drug addiction. We get to ride their coattails because they've come really, really far with the medical community. So we're still not where we need to be. And so insurance, medical insurance will now cover people's treatment, a lot of people's treatment for addiction and for alcoholism and drug addiction, but not for food yet. But we've gotten farther and farther. They're now saying that certain food substances look like addiction or act in the body like addiction, but we're not there yet. I know we will get there, and I really now believe the quickest way we can get there is to educate the world at large, and not the medical community, because they need to see proof. Because literally, people don't get better from these things, or they get marginally better. And there's people dying constantly, as we all know, from diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, cancers, and that's what's on the death certificate. However, that's the secondary disease. Very often, the main disease they're dying from is food addiction. And you know, we get into a whole other thing. Well, why is it this way? And unfortunately, and I don't want this to go into this other topic, but politically, what the world gains from the food industry, the food industry, unfortunately, is not with us on it. The people that now run the food industry were the people that used to run the tobacco industry, and they spend thousands of dollars on our processed food, having them become addicted, having us crave them. So there's so much political going on around it. But again, I say that more. I don't want to trash the food industry, but to also let people know that most of the foods we're eating are being they're being made so that they're addictive. So again, like, we don't stand a chance. Mm-hmm. We don't stand a chance. You know, like it's called the bliss factor in our food, and there's a lot of science that goes into making our food fit the bliss factor. So that's the other thing I'll say. Sorry if I'm digressing a little bit. Is that processed food, the most often that we're eating food in its most natural form, the least addictive it is to us. So any kind of food that's processed, which is almost anything you buy off the grocery shelves, unless it's in the produce aisle or the seafood, meat or aisles, is processed. And just know, someone's job is to make that food fit the bliss factor. So it's got enough salt, enough sugar, enough fat for us to want it, but not want so much that we stop right away. So anyways, I digress there, Louise, when you asked me the question about the medical industry, but the deal is we're not where we need to be, and we're working on it. And we've a lot of us in the field have realized that the way to get there is not through the medical community, but through our own stories, and then sharing and talking about it. So I talk about this to anyone I possibly can. You know, my doctor, my dentist, my naturopath, anyone that's in the field.
What's interesting is that growing up, you came from the healthiest eating family that I've ever, like your mom was like organic avocados and organic everything. She was kind of like, you know, for lack of a better word, a hippie that was like very into Whole Foods and worked in that industry and owned a Whole Food store. And like, so I don't think that anyone's immune to it. I mean, if anyone was, you know, quote unquote set up for success in like what was presented on the table, it was you. But it, you know, it comes back to those, to how we start to use food for other things, and then that how it develops. With me, it can be food, but more predominantly in my earlier life it was alcohol and other substances, and then, you know, those things can transfer to other things, right? So, you know, at one point you had said that you were in high school more into alcohol. I mean, I was right beside you. And then once you put those things down, it can really just move to the next, because if you're not dealing with the emotional struggles that you're having, these can develop into addictions. And in my case, with alcohol, I believe I was always addicted. Like that was just, I didn't work at that. That just was always there. So I think, what do you think about genetic predispositions on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I read a lot of it, and you know, I've worked with a lot of clients, and so I believe that there's kind of two ways we can become addicted. One is that we're genetically predisposed to addiction, and we can be genetically predisposed to addiction if 10% of our blood relatives are addicted. And yeah, make no mistake, addiction comes in a lot of forms: alcohol, drugs, food, gambling, sex, the internet. I mean, and again, our society is set up that we're addicted. So if 10% of our blood relatives are addicted, then we are predisposed. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to be an addict. If we're never exposed to that addictive substance, we're not going to become an addict. So I believe some people are born addicts, which is what you're talking about. I also believe I was born an addict. And then we can also become addicted by overuse, by overconsumption of something. And I want to get clear here, because people get confused about this. The reason I ate was not because of my trauma. The reason I ate the way I did was because I'm chemically addicted. So that's what addiction is. However, along with that is this part about, I actually don't know how to show up and deal with the humanness of life. I have these emotional issues. So we're addicted because we're chemically addicted, not because of emotional trauma. And though the emotional trauma needs to be dealt with, because that's what we've also used to fill, as you say, that hole in us.
Mm-hmm. The question I have, though, is that's what I was trying to get to here is, because I believe that I was born an addict. Some people have to work at addiction to become addicted, right?
The overuse.
So the overuse.
Yeah.
So, but when you're referring to you, are you just speaking specifically about you, where you were chemically dependent? You didn't work at that? That was just something that you always were?
Yeah, I believe, and again, I don't know because there was no,
okay.
I believe I came out chemically dependent, and I believe it could have been many different things. Like, as you said, I think when I was a young girl, it started going towards food. And then in high school, it changed to drugs and alcohol. And then when I put down drugs and alcohol, the food came on incredibly strong. And so that's what I believe for me. But there are many people that was not their experience. It has just come from overconsumption and the body just getting whatever it may be. Sugar is mostly that one.
Yeah.
From the overconsumption of something. So now our body needs that to function normally. And there's whole science around, the dopamine, and, our body needs that substance to just feel normal, to wake up in the morning and feel like we want to carry on. We now need those substances just to get to that normal level. And we need more and more and more and more of it to get to that level if we're actually addicted.
like I'm no neuroscientist, but I do
All
know
right.
myself that I have a high pleasure threshold, like a very high, like I need, even in my work, I need it to be exciting and go big. And like, I
Yeah.
can't, like, I need high stimulation. So
No way, Louise. Really?
yeah. So I think that, so I think that is a common trait, I would say,
It is.
amongst addicts as well, is that there's this threshold in our brain chemistry that needs high hits. And so, whether your hit comes from food, drugs, alcohol, shopping, sex, working is another one for me. Um, and that's something also to think about is, we had this conversation in my coaching group last night, like around food, like when you're eating, like what purpose is this serving for me? Like have a pause. And I think that that's where many of us, we were talking about the mosh pit of life, where you're just in it and you're just like grinding around and you don't have that reprieve or that space. And I can imagine that that's what that intensive is so incredibly valuable for, is to step back and to have some professionals there and to just have a pause from your life and have some revelations. Like, wow, I'm sure you're having like big revelations in the space that you create from daily living.
Oh yeah. I mean, Louise, I can't even express to you what goes on in these 7 days. And you're right, it is in that pause of life. And again, if we're food addicted, we never get a pause from those foods really either. So we're not even clear thinking. And so you're just right. I loved how you described life as the mosh pit. Like it's true. It is this mosh pit. It's the state of the human condition. That's the world. And so there's part of it where we need to accept that that's the world and that we're okay. We don't need a substance to make us feel better. We can. It's like I need to know that I can show up and live this mosh pit, but I don't have to have something like work, sex, drugs, alcohol, food to make me able to cope with life. I have the skills to cope with it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's what it is. That's really what we're going for. It's to get rid of the substances and then help us create the skills to live in the mosh pit of life.
And the other thing we were talking about last night is how we live in a society that where we have to fix this feeling, or we have to not feel it or run from it, or be positive. Like, what's your problem? Like, when really, like you're talking about human being human,
the human condition. Yeah.
the human condition. And sometimes, as you know, Amanda, I've really had a struggling year emotionally, where it's like, it's okay just to be sad and grieve and, not be super happy. And it's okay actually just to sit in it. And that's really been my practice this year, is just being like, yeah, this is me. Here I am sitting in it and not trying to run from it.
Well, and Louise, you just, what you said is so vital for me to hear all the time, and for everyone, is that we believe we're not going to make it through our emotions. We're not going to make it through the feelings. And so we need to keep learning that I'm okay no matter what feelings are going on inside of me. Nothing bad is happening. I'm just full of feelings. And we can be so uncomfortable with them. And it really is, that is being a human being. We can't avoid that. That is living life to its fullest. I get to feel my joy and excitement and happiness more. And I also get to feel my sadness, anger, fear more. It's the way the world is. And so what I need to learn is that I'm okay if I'm in a lot of emotional pain. I'm okay. I can sit. I can do that pause. And so much of us, we do anything we can to get out of those feelings. Yeah. And the problem, of course, we don't want to feel that way. The goal is not to just feel crappy all the time. However, the ways we use to get out of those feelings can be very detrimental to us and harmful. And then we're even worse down than we were in the beginning. But we get that, it's like that moment of reprieve. We'll take that for a much longer time of distress. Mm-hmm. So it's that short-term gain that we will often get caught in living. Whereas if we let ourselves stay in the pain for a little bit, the long-term gain is so much more gratifying and worth it. And I think we have no proof that that's the way it is. And so we need people that have been in recovery. We need people to share their stories, to say, hey, I was exactly where you were. I really get it. And I need you to know that there is this other way.
And learning other tools to reach out to rather than, reaching out for food or drugs or alcohol or shopping or whatever that may be.
Exactly.
And before we wrap up, I'm trusting that in your intensives, you really talk about the food and you show people the detox and the plan, but I'm sure over those 7 days, you're getting into this work as well, where you're looking at behaviors and that kind of stuff as well.
Absolutely, Louise. Because if we just did the food and the detox, it would be like any other diet that we've done.
Yeah.
So when we're not setting people up for success. So it's really about giving people the tools to go out and live this life, kind of one day at a time, and that it really is a lifelong journey. And you as I say, it's your connection with other people, it's the connection with us. We need other people in your camp, and we need tools to go out there and live life. Because if we only, I know I say this, but I just gotta keep saying it. If we only focus on the food, it's going to be no different than anything else that we've done. Then it's a diet. And we need to be in recovery from food addiction.
Yeah.
It includes all of it. Getting rid of the substance is first, and then we have to learn really what you and I are talking about. How do I show up and deal with life? When life comes at me, which is going to come at me, what do I do? What do I do instead of picking up the food?
Mm-hmm.
And there is tools we can do. There is tools, and I have to use them every day because life comes at me every day. I am not some angel by any stretch. I don't have to tell you this, Louise. I struggle a lot, and so I need tools, because if not, I'm going for that food. And I just know I've had a daily and only a daily reprieve from my food for 5.5 years, and it's because I every day I show up and learn to be in this world, learn to accept myself to the best of my ability on that day. And tomorrow, I'll know more than I do today. So tomorrow, my best will look different than it does today.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love that. So where can people, I know you mentioned your website earlier, but can you give us your website, any social media handles that people can follow what you're doing?
Sure. So our website again is www.foodaddiction.com. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter, and we have an office, and all our contact information is on the website. There's a lot of information on the website just in general about what is food addiction, and I'm always willing to talk to people. If people are just unsure or they have questions, please don't hesitate. You can call the office, and you'll get Renee at the office, and she will absolutely connect you with me. And or I have a few other counselors that work with us. We're all recovering food addicts, and we're just always willing to share and talk about it. And so I would love to hear from anybody, any questions. And my email address is actually amanda@foodaddiction.com. So feel free, people can send me any kind of questions or comments. And I'm so grateful to talk about this, Louise, and I'm so grateful for all the work you do, Louise. You inspire me constantly with what you do and how you show up in the world. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that it's food addiction or food addictions?
Food addiction.
Okay, so foodaddiction.com.
Yeah, so www.foodaddiction.com.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if there was an S on there.
No,
I want to make sure that people can reach you. I'm sure you're going to have some people contacting you, because I think it's a really important topic, and I really think that it's an avenue that a lot of people haven't considered. So thanks for coming on, and I hope you guys enjoyed the interview, and you can contact Amanda if you have any more questions. All right, everyone, we'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.